Okay, thank you so much. And just wanted to remind everyone, if you're in person or if you're participating remote, if you could please make sure to speak up in your comments, your questions. And then if you're remote, if you could please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, just in case you have some background noise. And so with that, we'd like to convene the January 19th Bond Oversight meeting for 2023. And if we could please start, and if we could please ask staff to do a roll call vote today, please.
Ian Taylor, I'm here. Abraham Mayhall.
Here.
Frank Charlton.
Here.
David Flack.
Here.
Michael Flores.
Here.
Myron Goins. Chair will be here today, Jean Lazaro. Nicole Oregon Denario. Al Lopez.
Here.
And Yvette Williams.
Okay, and is Trustee Guzman with us this morning?
Not yet.
Okay, but we do have quorum, correct?
We did, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Al, would you mind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Robert had a question real quick. I wasn't called.
You weren't.
Yes.
I'm,
Not here.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we please start the meeting with agenda item 1.01, the flag salute? Al Lopez, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. And I apologize I can't be there with you today. I know Al's got everything handled there in person for anything that might arise. Okay, now moving on to agenda item 1.02, adoption of the agenda. Is there any public comment on adoption of the agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? And anyone refraining? So, okay, with that, we will move to agenda item 2.01, approval of the minutes. And just by way of background, before we start this agenda item, in conversation with staff, we noted that one of the prior bond oversight meeting approval of the minutes, because we had a meeting that was canceled, perhaps it was an oversight, but we need to ensure that we have these minutes approved for the record. So we'll be approving two sets of agendas today, and we're going to take those separately, please. Can we please ask if there's any public comment on the approval of the minutes? Al, is there any public comment?
No, there's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first minutes that we would like to approve is from December 19th, 2019. And this is the one that we are trying to make sure that we have all of our documentation. This is a meeting that, because of, as I understand, failure to make quorum, the meeting did not occur. And so if I could please have a motion to approve the minutes from December 19th, 2019, please.
Actually, I think we just have some name discrepancies on that one. There's some names I don't recognize, and in members absent, my name is, I think this is, the one I have says Thursday, December 19, 2019, and I just noticed that. Oh, I'm sorry, you're saying this isn't from December, this is from 2019.
It's December 19th of 2019, and this is we're trying to ensure that all of the records are appropriately recorded. So yeah, this is one where some were not even on the bond oversight at the time.
Got it. I was making assumptions December of 2022. I motion that we approve these.
Thank you so much, Gina. And a second?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Al. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any against? Okay, thank you so much. And so now we'd like to move to our second set of agenda, minutes from the November 17th, 2022 meeting. Are there any additions, changes, or comments on those minutes? I do have one. So there's a reference in the conversation that we had regarding our upcoming, actually I think it's related to air quality. And my notes reflect that when we had the conversation on air quality, one of the items that we had asked for perhaps our site selection team or for the staff to consider bringing back is when the school district is providing basically sites for future development or new schools, what consideration is being given for the air quality and other types of activity that may be nearby? And I think this speaks to potentially the item that we had discussed at that November 17th meeting, that there might be a mine located, that there is a mine located near and about one of the schools, but the minutes basically, I think, are a little bit contradictory and may not summarize that correctly. So I thought we were going to have a future topic with the staff, with our two site selection representatives, but that's not the way that the minutes reflect. And I guess I'd ask maybe Al or Dave if that's your recollection. Or if Justin is there as well, because I know Mark wasn't at the meeting.
I think that we were going to have I think you're right. You're right. We concur with you.
Okay.
So
yeah. So if we could maybe get those minutes corrected to accurately reflect that. And I think also, Abraham, you had also referenced whether or not an industrial hygienist is included in some of those issues as it relates to when a site is selected for a school.
Correct, or if maybe the school district has somebody in staff, I'm not sure, but from the risk management, that's probably little that can do it, if the city can't do it.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
Patty, this is Mark Campbell for the record. I would be happy to at least partially discuss this item when I do my presentation later in this meeting, and then maybe we can look at modifying that agenda item request just to make it clear what was being asked. Okay.
I think that would be acceptable, but if we could have the minutes reflect that that correction, that would be great. I don't know if we can go ahead and perhaps that we can ask the attorney if we can still go ahead and make that modification to the minutes and still approve, or should we bring it back to the next meeting?
Just make the modification here and then you change it and you can get it approved. Whatever you need to be able to do.
And I'm sorry, I can't hear, I couldn't hear that. So Al, could you just act accordingly?
Just specify your changes that you want to make to the minutes. They can make them and you can approve them at this meeting.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. So on those minutes then,
in the form of a motion, Patty, to accept the minutes as correct.
yeah, I'm trying to make sure I get it at the right location from our conversation. Okay, yeah, so if I could please make an amendment first to the minutes under future agenda planning, is that the motion to have a presentation on air quality issues, which is really separate, but it should say that a motion to have a future presentation by staff regarding how air quality is a consideration and being included as a site selection for new schools and activities that occur on or around the schools. Does that make sense?
Now we're ready for a motion now? Patty? We're ready for a motion now?
Yes, please.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, with that, we have approval of the minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, now moving on to agenda item 2.02, reports by chair and or liaison/representatives. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Hearing none, at this time, at least on behalf of the board chair, I don't have any comments at this time, but would like to turn my time over to Mark Campbell, Interim Chief Facilities Officer. Mark, do you have any updates for us this morning?
Just two quick updates. We've been talking about the FCI report and bringing that to the group. Our target is to bring that report as February's meeting. And the other open item with the working group with the help of Ms. Blackman-Taylor and Ms. Williams was to look at our regulation 7112, which is about facility replacement. We are working on quite a few changes to that, at least recommended changes by staff, based on our discussion with our working group. And so we're going to be distributing that draft of that between now and the next meeting. Potential consideration next meeting, but probably a little bit longer time frame on that in terms of bringing it to this committee and then ultimately the school board. And I think that's what I have.
Great. Are there any questions for Mark? All right, thank you very much. So now moving forward from the next liaison, we know that Chad Conrad, our liaison for finance/investment, was not able to be with us today. And so if we could please move to construction, Abraham Camejo and Al Lopez, do you have a report for us this morning?
No, yeah, last time we talked about the security cameras and Dr. Jarrah was mentioned that it would be taken care of through some, through the financials, through the grants, stuff. So I'm not sure if, facilities or anybody else has started any new installations or upgrades. Those are fines. That was brought up.
Mark, do you have any status on those upgrades?
Specifically the Desert Pines, I'm not here to provide an update, but we're going through all high schools over the next 6 months or so. It should be complete, I think, if I'm doing my math right. 6 to 8 months. Where we are doing security camera augmentations. So we're adding any number of cameras that the school will need to cover areas, placing cameras that are not functional or not providing the view that the school needs, and then we're adding perimeter fencing where it's needed to facilitate a single point of entry. So honestly, Desert Pines is one of our first, if I'm not mistaken. I may just be misremembering that. Regardless, all high schools will be completed and we'll be moving to middle school in the same path. There's a specific issue with Desert Pines. We could take that offline.
If I may just bring up, I'm not sure if it's, but it's been popular in the news right now with the lack of AEDs on the school properties. Or just like, for example, at Rancho High School, they only have 3 AEDs on campus. And regarding like new construction, are we considering to maybe have more AEDs around our different facilities available for our teachers, coaches, stuff? Because it looks like there's a lack of AED machines for CPR purposes in our schools. Middle schools are, I believe, there's only 2 of them, and elementary schools, I've talked to a couple of principals, and Actually, there's a lot of schools that actually don't have any elementary schools. So that might be something that we might want to start considering, moving forward, upgrading our current schools and then making sure that our new schools are properly being adequate with proper locations of more than 3 AEDs on campus. Because our schools have 3,000 students from. So we can start considering maybe more additional AEDs to be installed as part of the planning of our future buildings.
Abraham, thank you. And perhaps we can add that into our motions and taskings when we get to that section. I don't know that we need a full agenda item, but perhaps we could ask staff to bring that back. Because obviously placement of safety materials and equipment is part of a facility, typically along with EH&S or perhaps even your wellness.
Patty, if I may make a suggestion,
Sure.
this would be a fine discussion to have, if we're talking about liaisons, in a meeting with Justin, at some point outside of this, because that's certainly a standard that we don't control, but it's a standard that we serve for our programming in our departments of the district. So I think that would probably be able to do that.
Okay, so you're recommending that in lieu of discussing it under motions and taskings, that we have our liaisons discuss that with Justin in the interim between meetings?
Yes, because Justin and his team are who's going to interface with our district partners on what goes in new schools.
Okay, Al and Abraham, does that sound like a good approach?
Yes, completely. That sounds like a great approach.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Any questions for Al or for Abraham?
Robert Curtis, for the record. I'd like to be also involved in
Okay, sounds like there are no questions. So now moving on to Rob Gerdison and design. Rob, do you have a report for us today?
I do. Just met with Justin before the meeting and giving just an update on the school designs. So the elementary schools are between 65 and approaching 95% design. The middle schools are between 35 and 65%. The last issue that we addressed last November was that we were facing some budget issues. Trying to get the current estimates of today's climate estimates to meet yesterday's budget. It seems like the CMAR process is working well, so we narrow in on getting there. And another thing that Justin did share with me was that the programming of these spaces revisited and looked at to be condensed and more efficient and that would reduce square footage, which relates to reduction in construction costs. So with that said, I think that the schools are getting leaner and meaner and better designs. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Rob Gerdison?
I had a question, Patty, but not strictly just for Robert, maybe for Justin. I noticed on one of the schools on the east side of town, it's Heritage Fair. Designed to put in an artificial grass and fencing. The whole county of the school block. I don't know if that's something that's going to be. That's just something that the principal there is doing on their own or his own, or is this something some of the other schools are looking to do?
We have a mix for a project like that. Is that part of the new school? Hey, Aaron?
It's an open,
Bigger, so it would either be part of our aquaculture removal, in conjunction with the water authority, where we've been removing a lot of the existing grass that out in landscape or out from the schools where people want to use it, other things like that. Or it may be part of a project with the school themselves to solve some aquaculture grass.
Yeah, so we have a mix, and I'm actually going to talk about it a little bit of what we're doing at the district level in terms of turf removal. But yes, we do have schools put together site-funded projects in different areas. We prefer to have
I hope you're aware of the property is all fence, turf on.
Yeah.
It looked kind of cool, actually.
But we catch on.
That's all I got, Betty. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And this is to Rob and Justin. I remember that when we talked in November, we talked about once design processes got to a certain level of completion, it was appropriate to kind of have a public information, public comment, like a chance to kind of get public input on some of these designs. Does the fact that some of these elementary school designs are reaching that 95% completion, does that mean that we're closer to having that sort of format?
Great question. In fact, it was, I just saw here the minutes from last November's meeting. So this Groups and Strokes and Brandon McLaughlin stated that he was putting together a presentation for that design. So what I'll do is I'll just revisit this with the staff and find out about schedule.
Yeah, I think when we get, because I understand and I totally agree that you need a certain level of completion before you kind of open it up, but I think before you kind of that final approval, I think it's nice to have a chance to include that sort of input.
Yes, thank you for the reminder.
Okay, thank you, and thank you both for all your questions and the feedback. So moving on, for Dave Flatt, and I believe that Gene, I don't believe I heard him respond that he's there. Do we have an update on site selection and land use?
No, we have no report at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. Now moving on to community government relations, Gina Blackman-Taylor. Gina, do you have a report for us today?
As Mark indicated, some of these things are in the middle, so we're just moving forward. I will say I did see there was the news report about the bleachers, the burned bleachers being fixed, and that had been something that had come up in public comments. So I want to thank facilities and whatnot for whoever got that information out, but also that it got fixed. So even if that was not specifically responsive to a community comment, but the fact that we got a community comment on it and then we can point to it being where it's well done around. And then, yeah, more just we're in between on a few things. So that's it for me.
Can I ask a question?
Ooh, absolutely. Any questions for Gina?
All right, Michael Flores for the record. So I know we're getting ready for legislative session.
Yeah.
Governor's going to say the state next week. He obviously has talked about stability, and I would expect there's going to be some conversations with the school district as far as what we do and what we're planning to do. Just wondering if this group will all be a part of some of those conversations.
I wonder, Mark, if you would like to, I don't know, Gina, that we get involved in all of the different government relations issues, but I know that typically the chief facilities officer assists us in our lane. But Mark, do you want to provide any context, or Gina?
Go ahead, and I can speak after.
I guess I would say right now, I don't have an answer to that as far as this body, but I'm happy to take that to our chief communications, which is Todd Story. He's leading all of our efforts, legislative sessions. I can bring that to him.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Gina, any comments that you wanted to add? I also wanted to follow up on Michael's comment too, though, if you don't mind, Gina, first, is that, I know one of the potential legislation changes does relate to including even activities of committees and others. So I guess I also would be curious if we can be kept apprised of any potential impact on legislation that may impact this body as well. So I don't know if you want to provide any comment or feedback about that.
I'd like to, I want to follow up with you actually, because I think this is an area that, especially during this time, we get so busy, having some extra help in that area would be useful. I know from 2 years ago that it was one of the challenges is how slow things move until they don't move slow any longer, and then it becomes harder to check off with everyone. Last year or 2 years ago, the push was to get this bond increase approved. But yeah, in terms of the governor's comments and how that might affect what sort of oversight we're supposed to be doing, particularly if there's things that change in legislation that dictate what we are supposed to be doing. But at this point, to be able to kind of split some of that would be also very helpful because it does move very fast and furious.
Yeah. Thanks, Gina. Yeah, and I know during the last session is also when the bond expansion happened, and it was very rushed towards the end, but we had even offered our assistance in any testimony that would be applicable. So if anything comes up, that might be a way to utilize this body as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, and all right, are there any other questions for Gina Blackman-Taylor? Yes, Yvette Williams, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Oh, we cannot hear you.
Apologies for being late, Madam Chair. I brought back from the Dominican Republic a cold, so
Okay.
I didn't want to expose everybody. I thought, well, I'll wear a mask, but there was one person in our party that tested for COVID, so I just want to make sure I tested negative, but I just being cautious. So
we appreciate that very, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So what agenda item are we on? I'm sorry.
We are on updates from liaisons.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay. Seeing we are through with that item, I want to move on to agenda item 2.03, report by the Clark County Board of School Trustees liaison. First, want to see if there's any public comment. And then wanted to just inquire if Trustee Guzman's been able to join us.
She is not at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was an information item. Moving on now to agenda item 2.04, the 2015 Capital Improvement Program summary status. First, we'd like to see if there is any public comment. Okay, at this point then, we'd like to turn it over to Rodney Fouts. And so Rodney, if we could let you take it from here for agenda item 2.04.
Thank you. Rodney Fouts for the record. Could we please have 2.04A brought up on the screen, please? And if possible, can we slide down a little bit on that screen so we can see the total revenues? Oh, a little too far. Go back up a little bit, please. Right there, that's fine, thank you. As you can see, our revenue to date on our bond refinancing is $2.86 billion. Our expenditures to date are $2.3 billion. With the encumbrances of another $213 million to be expensed, and totals to $2.51 billion, leaving us with available cash fund balance of $564.5 million. However, taking in the encumbrances, we're down to $351.7 million. You slide down on that screen, you can see those totals. If we can now go to 2.04B. Anticipated bond proceeds are not changed. We're still at $7.7 billion. Our budgeted projects currently are $6.74 billion, leaving us just under $1 billion available proceeds for other projects. The one thing you'll notice in this particular set of documents is there's a lot of light blue in the adjusted budget column. And we have significant changes in that column due to the design pages that are out with the OPCs. In the original budget column, there's only a $5,000 change, and that's for an assessment for us with elementary school roof assessment. And when we put in the assessment value at the beginning, because we use the assessment to help us identify what the actual cost of the project will be. We factor that into the revised budget column as well. We have roughly just under $6.8 billion, or excuse me, $6.8 million that we've added to our revised budget column, what we call our current budget column. And that's comprised of 18 different school items. One of them we just mentioned was press with. And we'll go through and give the amounts that have increased in budget. First, Brimley Middle School Replacement School, we've gone up just under $1.5 million. Oversight Middle School Replacement School, we've gone up just under $1.4 million. Woodbury Middle School Replacement School, we've gone up in budget $1.1 million. The large one is Las Vegas Academy Phase 1 replacement, which is just under $14.5 million. Brand Middle School Comprehensive Modernization, that has gone up just under $4 million. White Middle School Comprehensive Modernization is gone up $1.7 million. Bass Elementary School Comprehensive Modernization has gone up just under $4.9 million. And our Rancho High School HVAC upgrade has gone up $542,000. On the other side, we have some projects where the budget has gone down, which is some good news for a change. So St. Jude's Ranch New School, we've done that $1.7 million on our budget. Mac Middle School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $3.2 million. Silverado High School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $1.3 million. Cimarron Memorial High School Comp Modernization has gone down $8.7 million. Swanston Middle School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $2.6 million. West Park Middle School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $3.8 million. Cheyenne High School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $4.9 million. Sylvester Middle School Comprehensive Modernization has gone down $302,000. So all those combined to give us an increase of just under $6.8 million in the current budget column. One item I'll bring up, since the majority of those projects are the comprehensive modernizations. What we've done is had our team work diligently with the architects to bring in what our initial estimates were. The company we used called OCMI to provide the original estimates. We work diligently now on the 60% assessment to help the architect establish what they think they overcharged in its original estimates. That's what's brought these numbers down. I won't say that they will hold steady, but the reality is it's good news that at least we felt the company first. We're pricing everything just to be conservative. We're seeing that in most projects. It doesn't mean we're seeing it in so many replacement projects at this time. I guess if there's any particular one that you would like to address, then either myself or Justin can chime in to provide more information. I have a quick question. Sure. On Michael Torres, if we're not told, and it says it's over budget, what's the reasoning for that? Just so I can understand.
Well, initially, when we established our budgets, we go out and we based on, obviously, revision 5 was established last year. We went out with our budgets at that time. Typically, when you're talking about an elementary school, they're usually in the high 20 range to middle 30 range. When you get to middle schools, which we haven't really built in a long time, for our standard middle schools, you're looking at a budget of roughly $85 million. We were going to downsize most of these middle schools since we don't have the attendance that we used to. So then we were looking at roughly $65 million in some of those projects. And when you get into a high school, now you're getting into the upper around $200 million or higher. What we found is in our estimates in most of our projects, as you're seeing, based upon like the report that was provided by, I believe it was Patty last month, 2 months ago actually now, and she was seeing that the cost increases were about 25% higher. We had stated, I think, a month or two before that, that's what we were seeing based upon information that we were provided by some of the contractors that we deal with. What you're seeing is that these numbers are coming in, and what's kind of alarming is they're coming in higher than our overall budget, which is a construction budget plus,
markup that we would put in just to be safe. And when we start seeing those costs coming in higher than that, then that's why we think there's some over padding on the parts of potentially the contractors just to cover the bases.
Thank you.
Great. Rodney, thank you for that report. And I actually wanted to also acknowledge that I think the work that Rob had mentioned on even looking at the programming side of some of these schools that are under design and looking at ways, I think the term was leaner and meaner or right sizing or whatever the appropriate term is, but that's an important process right now, especially given what you're seeing. And I think what both you and Justin have referred to before is just this very fluctuating environment for cost. So are there additional questions for Rodney?
Yeah, I have a question, Abraham Camino for the record. If I could just talk about graduate high schools HVAC. Originally wasn't at 500,000, give or take, the original estimate, and now we're seeing that there's another increase. It was pretty much like doubling, literally doubling that cost. So what's, apart from the material, why is it like, just to me, it sounds like it's doubled, like just double, so why?
Dr. Gier, would answer that about Rancho's HVAC. I think I have it, but I'd rather just start.
Because we see a report where original costs were like already in the 500, and now we're being told that there's an increase of another 500, so $500,000. So now we're talking about the same project going to be costing what, $1 million?
So we're, if I'm understanding this correctly, our original budget was around 2.4 million. It's a $500,000 increase. So we're about 2.9 million. Not the original budget was 500,000. Rodney, correct me if I'm wrong.
Running back to the record, the budget we originally put in was go back prior to the first half of this project and report, make sure we reflected on the number to the column. But we have added $542,000 to that project. We have the original budget to
I can tell you that what part of this is not just because the project is costing more, it's we're doing more on the project. So there were things found during the design and work of the engineer. I believe it's related to the water, either the hot water or the domestic water in the facility. Also needs to be, so it's additional work being done while we're at that facility. There's some out there, I'm trying to find it, but it's not just that we've got budget. It's more work.
Is that also concerning the old gym?
Yes, that's the, I think it's the old gym.
Yes, so so there were some HVAC issues as well as some domestic water issues, dealing with some of the new showers. So especially as we're seeing less and less use of large lockable showers. We're starting to be able to kind of right size house and pull this back so that we'll be having a handful, which helps us in the long run because the large water meters we require with those don't get exercised if they're not being used.
So currently that building is being used for our system. So why are we selling locker room showers then?
They were was really decent showers, so we wanted to making sure that they're being dealt with properly, as opposed to just sitting there and causing problems while the water's running.
Yeah, correct, but if we fix these, because I'm familiar with the gym, I went there. So we're fixing the old showers, but nobody's going to be using these new showers even after we fix it because the entire building is being used for ROTC. So the locker room, the shower room is literally being converted. Currently, it's an office space. So we're investing money on boilers and plumbing that's not going to be used because there's other showers in the main campus. Why are we spending the money to fix that there? And then versus having the plumbing of for sports. Because there's two locker rooms in there, the boys and the girls. So right now, none of them are being used, and they won't be used. The whole building is being used.
I will have to call
If we need to go talk to, like, this, or that. I don't actually see, because if we're spending money on boilers, they're not gonna use them, and we spend all this money, they're gonna just go back, they're gonna get wasted. So that's why I'm like, oh, like, why? You know, let's put the money in other schools, or maybe readjust the budget to the main campus, or spend it to one school, or, make sure that we're spending money correctly.
Rob, first, the record, question for that, ROTC will be utilizing that permanently, or ever switch back to
They've been there for the last 10 years,
10 years?
10, 15 years.
So there's no sign of,
Because we have locker rooms, and the football locker room are in the main, up on the new building. And so ROTC's been using that, and what does need to replace is the flooring of the gym, because of the guns dropping on the floors for competition. At one point, I was using the old gym for wrestling practice, running my wrestling practices at the gym. So yes, there's issues with air conditioning. We've never once used it. There's no locker rooms, that's what I want to say, they're offices. There's desks, they converted, there's temporary walls there, and we have two, everything's in the new building. So the main gym is in the main building, so that's just an auxiliary. That was my new gym when I was in there. Because the old gym got torn down from the original gym. So, I can tell you, as a coach, I've been a coach there, we never used those locker rooms.
it sounds like a follow-up.
Are we good on the Rancho project at this point, or do we need to perhaps let construction ask those questions offline, or can we proceed to the next set of questions?
I think as in construction, I think we should take a tour and meet with the right team, and then figure out exactly what's going on there. So if we can save some money, it's better. So we can let Ronnie, move the money around and then spend it in other places that it should be spent correctly.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll put that with Mark and with Justin, perhaps to do a site tour of that space and to further have that conversation. Justin, just if you can, when you're speaking, is it possible for you to get closer to a microphone? It's a little difficult. Actually, it's very hard to hear you. And I'm sorry, I know you can project loudly. Ms. Williams, I see that you have your hand up, and then we'll turn back to the room for any additional questions. Ms. Williams.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask this, but last meeting I had asked for some information as it relates to environmental impacts to our schools. Those schools that are located to industrial such as Wells Cargo, so forth. I wanted to, and someone from facilities was going to get back to me and provide me with that information. I don't have that unless I overlooked an email. Can I please get an update? Because in my opinion, that falls specifically under renovations and things we need to consider. Not all schools may need that, but some of our schools may need some additional funds as it relates to making sure that their school environment is cleaner. I don't think we'll ever get it clean in those instances, but where it's safer for them. Okay. Is this the right time, Madam Chair, or should I hold that at a later time?
I think we spoke a little bit about the minutes from the last meeting. There was also a conversation about when schools are located or where they're located and how site selection may impact environmental concerns, such as if there's a mine or something. But Mr. Campbell, Mark, are you going to be providing any context, because you referenced some overlap with your presentation that's on the agenda?
I will touch on it, but I think the agenda item that was clarified earlier will result in us coming back more specifically, and I think that will help address this question.
Okay.
Will that provide me with locations, school locations?
Relative to school locations where.
Schools that are located next to, in particular, are such as like Wells Cargo, where there's digging and where we have air quality issues. Because I know Wells Cargo opened up reopened an old facility over off of Jones that now impacts a middle school and an elementary school.
We can make sure that's covered in the agenda item that was added. Yes.
For future agenda item. Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I was expecting some information from facilities to provide, and I didn't get anything back. So in the future, if you could just let me know, that you plan to give a presentation, that's fine. But I really would like to have that information.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Williams. It was listed under a future agenda planning, but that I understand the clarification. We should have clarified it at that time at the meeting. So yes, and make sure to circle back.
Yeah, because I was expecting something. I did not anticipate that I was going to have to wait for an agenda item to get that.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you. And so are there questions in the room on this agenda item 2.04?
This is Gina Blackman-Taylor for the record. I have a question. It sounds like with some of the decreases and the increases that a large part of those increases have been able to be mitigated, but I know in the past we've also talked about revision, 5.A or 5.1 or so. Is there a plan or a need to revise or update all of that work from revision 5 because that was now summer of 2021, correct? And it was approved in December of 2021. So is that a part of the process over the summer? Are we still okay in terms of these numbers, that we're okay with revision 5 as it stands? What sort of adjustments are we going to need to make?
So I think right now we want to type to what's going on in revision 5.
Okay.
I'd really wait to see where we come in with a series of projects long term, because in general we've kind of seen some ups and downs that have helped us throughout the overall project, I want to say. So 1 year we may see a slight spike, and then 2 years later we may see a dip because of some random thing. It all kind of evens out, and it takes a few years for that data to really know what the process for the conditions and all the projects.
And then given that, I'm sorry, did you want to?
I was just going to piggyback to say that I think what was different about CIP 5 was it really went out, right? We went out with looking at every dollar, almost every dollar approved. I think it was different than how CIP had been done prior to that. So now we're talking about modifications as opposed to years long now, right? We're already up to 2035, we're not going to 2040. So there will be things that need to come up that start to stack up. I think we're not there yet. But the time will come, it might be a year.
Okay. And then in an addendum to that, where are we at with older city conversations?
We're just starting to have those conversations, particularly around middle school. Because the SAT on middle school is pretty high, and there's a need to work towards a decision quickly there. So right now we're looking at middle school and see what that's going to look like. We don't have a decision.
Okay. Have there been the promised town hall or public conversations that were kind of committed to as part of that process?
I think when we come up with a recommendation, and that might be a kind of a recommendation that would result in a deciding, a relatively big change to the plan. But we we don't have, so no, we haven't had community.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any additional questions on this agenda item?
Hey, Ram, for the record, I just wanted to point out the good work on saving money for everybody on the team. That's actually really good to hear that. I believe you said there was $6.7 million. So if you could please relate that to your team and everybody that's involved, that's good. I just want to make sure that you can relay that out to everybody that's been working hard on trying to save money and working on diligently.
Running out to the record, thank you. I just want to make sure it's clear. Budget went up $6.8 million in total. And included projects that did come up. So I don't want to take credit and say getting another $7 million.
Well, you're working hard, and so that's what we want to make sure that we're trying to balance this very complicated budget.
That is putting it mildly. Okay, are there last call? Any additional questions? All right, seeing none, we will move to agenda item 2.05, sustainability and air quality update. First, we'd like to see if there is any public comment. Okay, I'm going to turn it to Mark Campbell for his presentation. Mark.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson. So today we're giving you our sort of annual regular update on what's going on in these topic areas. And so I'm kind of wearing my director of sustainability hat while I'm giving the presentation. And so the first bit of information that I wanted to speak about on slide 2 is related to energy efficiency and renewable energy. I've devoted one slide to this, but it covers a tremendous amount of work, so we're going to take our time and talk about it. The lighting project at Bailey Middle School, we're going to completely retrofit all of their fixtures inside this middle school. This has been a project that came out of work that we started about 2 years ago. So as we understand that there is a need for this particular type of work, we have a massive lighting project across the district that's not been done since about 2011. And so we're that far behind. And so we did audits of about 10 schools. Ultimately, we had some funds available from our relationship with Clark County Department of Environmental and Sustainability. Actually, along the lines of some of the discussion, that department is responsible for outdoor air quality. And so they are the ones who we would work with around our schools, and I can talk about this later. But as they do, as they are in charge of implementing ultimately fines on entities that don't meet their requirements for dust around the facility or emissions from generators or other emitting equipment. Those fines, once they cover their cost of the program, they are by state law directed to CCSD. And they're directed to CCSD for projects that will impact air quality. Energy efficiency has been deemed as one of those projects, as it does both regionally and locally improve air quality when we undertake a project. So we were able to identify particularly Bailey Middle School as one of the most challenging middle schools in terms of the lighting. And so we built a design around that school, and we're now going to be executing that project. The bid has been awarded, and we'll be moving forward with that here in the next couple of months. We use that school as a way to get a new design. Right? We haven't put a lot of effort into new lighting designs. Obviously, we've been putting LEDs in our schools for a number of years. But we really use this as a way to refresh our overall lighting design and our control scheme for how we do classrooms and exterior lighting. So with that, we're going to be looking at a much larger project that will encompass in the neighborhood of 200 schools. And so I hope to be bringing that information to you in subsequent meetings. It's not a done deal yet, but it is something that the district is in the form of a performance contract, which is something that the district has done before. It's a capital-free mechanism by which you procure energy savings. So, that's a little preview on that. But the reason we put a lot of heart and soul into Bailey was to be able to set us up for success on that project. Here you see a picture talking about solar energy and renewable energy. We were able to execute a project at Mojave High School with NV Energy. This particular project is not something that directly benefits the school in terms of energy. This is a community solar array that NV Energy was required to install. They actually had to put 5 across the state over the next couple of years. It's a very neat program. Mojave High School was the first location chosen. The energy produced does not go to the school, it leaves the site. It goes to NV Energy system, but it is able to be subscribed to by the residents that live in that area. So a certain percentage of residents and businesses are able to subscribe to that lower cost renewable energy. The benefit of the school district, this arrangement used our real estate. As you can see, it's a bus height solar array. So it's a long 500 kilowatt strip of solar that the school absolutely loves. And so that's the benefit that we got out of that. That is a quite expensive way to build solar, maybe one of the most expensive ways to build solar. So, but we are looking at the success of it, and obviously I have many schools asking about when they're going to get theirs. NV Energy won't put them all at schools; they have to spread the love a little bit around. So we're looking at that as other as a roadmap for potentially how to do it. But before that, we're looking at rooftops. And so I've listed a couple schools here. Your new Fremont Middle School, as well as the Northeast CTA, are both being built with solar on the roof. And we're hopeful that, I'm not going to say all of our new schools, but the majority of our new schools will be delivered with solar on the roof as well, because it's a no-brainer asset that goes to the school. Depending on how electricity rates go, we have projects that may even pay back within the term of the bond. So this is something that we're really looking forward to. And you may or may not know that we already have about 37 schools with our solar arrays. These were all done in the 2012 timeframe through federal and utility rebates. So we do want to operate those as we sit here today. Last bit, so energy efficiency with regard to HVAC systems. You may be aware that the Southern Nevada Water Authority has worked locally to ultimately put a moratorium on evaporative cooling systems. And that is something that we are able to work with them on. We've been engaged with them for well over a year on that effort at this point. And what that means is we're not using the cooling towers that you might be used to seeing on a large central point in the evaporative cooling system. It's called a consumptive use of water. That's water that doesn't go down a drain, that's kind of lost from our system. And so one of the areas that impacts the district from an operating cost standpoint is that it will result in the use of more electricity, because evaporative cooling is a very efficient way in the desert to cool, which is why everybody on warehouse space, large open areas uses swamp coolers, or in their garages they use swamp coolers. In particular, we use cooling towers on our designs because that allows you to install a evaporative cooling system, and you get a lot when you're in the dry climate in terms of performance. So there's a challenge there in the sense of we will spend more on electricity, which is why we were with solar. So we mitigate that impact. But we really need to do our part. We all see the impact to the need and the system. Finally, I have a picture on electric school buses. If you did not hear, we received our first set of electric school buses about a month ago, and very excited to welcome those to our transportation fleet. So our team is working very closely with transportation for the better part of a couple of years to make this real. Construction department has been a part of the charging infrastructure. This is the Arville yard. We have 2 buses and 2 chargers. Ultimately, we will have couple more added to that site over the next year. And in bigger news, we were awarded a grant from the Department of Protection Agency. We will be procuring 25 buses through that program, and accompanying charging infrastructure. And so obviously this work is significant for transportation groups, significant for facilities, and we're going to be partnering with NV Energy on this because it is an infrastructure bid. It's required to actually provide that kind of electrical service to charge up any buses in one location. But we're really happy about that. The transportation fleet overall is about 1,900 buses, so we've got a long way to go. But we're already getting their feet wet. I just drove by one of these electric school buses the other day. Quiet, no emissions, and so our drivers are being trained and enjoy it. You'll see those buses around. They don't look a whole lot different, as you can see. They have a little bit of a different front end and a little bit of blue around them, but otherwise they're our larger size school buses. So I'll pause on that slide for any questions before I move on to talking about cars.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mark at this time? I think he's got a few more slides to go.
Hey, Ram, for the record, I do have a question regarding the middle school. Regarding the lighting project, are we considering any natural lights upgrade, not just the same? Yes, skylights, thank you. The skylights.
Yeah,
Are we installing any skylights in the classroom? Like Valley High School had a roof upgrade a few years ago where they had a lot of skylights installed in the school, creating natural light.
yes. For this project, we had looked at adding daylighting inside of what they already have. All of our new designs have a daylighting component for all classrooms. That's not the case in some of our other schools. The challenge with the lighting projects overall is that because we're doing full fixture replacements, it's not just replacing, an LED bulb where a fluorescent one was. So, we're really just focusing on light fixture replacement. However, the element that I'm most excited about for the classroom teachers is it's a simple dimming capability. And you can walk in classes right now where they will either not use the lights like this because they're overlit, and they may bring in a lamp or two. It's just not an experience for anybody. Or they may cover lights, pull walls out, things like that. They're just not seeing things. So for that particular project, we had to look at daylighting. Where there is daylighting, we will certainly be putting sensors in there.
Thank you.
Dave Flatt, for the record, I was a wonderful job on going into renewable energy, going into the solar. I think that's the future, and I was here on top of it. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
You want to go first, Rob? Let's see. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Rob, first, for the record, just a quick question. Has the new upgrade for lighting posing a higher initial cost? I'm sure you've done the cost analysis to find out the cost of operation versus the initial cost. Is that what's that?
Yeah, so any of our lighting efforts are going to be in the payback period of 10 years, 10 to 12. And that sounds like a lot when you talk about lighting. The good news, bad news is that number is dropping. I don't know if you've watched your own electricity bills, but our rates have gone up by 30 to 40% last year.
Oh, yes, I have.
And so it's not good for me as an operator. It's been a huge challenge for us, for our budget. It does make energy efficiency projects that much more valuable. And so I'm really glad we started this project. So, it may be that payback. Honestly, I haven't run the numbers since we got a 14% increase in January. So it'll probably level out.
My leading question too is, and what benchmarks are we using? Are we using LEED or any other type of benchmark, or are we just using our own cost analysis to make the decisions on what the lighting is by?
It's been more performance based when it comes to lighting. We haven't as a district, well, what I believe, and Justin can speak to this, because this has been kind of a philosophy years now. We're kind of building to kind of around what a standard from an energy efficiency standard might be. We're not going after LEED certification. There's really no programmatic benefit to taking on the additional costs measures that would be required. My particular opinion on that is that when we set something like an energy per square foot goal, we put a bit of a challenge on our engineers, which is good in some ways, but can also result in systems that are very hard to maintain to meet a target. So we walk a balance with our engineers as efficient as possible. Some of the designs we've looked at that we've been a part of, we talk about HVAC, we talk about using air to cool the system instead of water, is to compare what they're going to look like from an energy standpoint. So we have had some feedback from the engineering teams on that to see that we're picking something that's maybe not the most costly from an energy standpoint.
Great. And then just maybe there's more comments, but for the evaporative cooling, I understand it saves a lot of water, evaporating, but it does take a lot of water to create electricity. And so I think there's a balance that could be looked at as far as like for example, it takes just this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's got 8 liters of paper, 8 liters of water of energy.
That's correct.
Just to make. Yep. So it might be more efficient to. I don't have the data on that, but just intuitively, it seems like it might be more efficient to have the evap coolers versus going to electric. I really think it will have a much higher water demand to make that much.
So the conversations, you're spot on. We've all pushed back on the water authority about this. They've hired a number of consultants to try to demonstrate the math here. The reality is, and I say this about natural gas as well, because I think they're pushing for electrification, lift systems, boilers, heat pumps. I'm sure you've heard that in this space. Is my sort of elevator pitch to that is I can make electricity green, and I can't make natural gas green, and I have a finite amount of water. So the vast majority, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, the vast majority of our power plants from power in this valley into natural gas power plants, 70%. Is water costs going up, natural gas costs going up. A mix of those plants are dry cooled already. So if you look at the megawatt hours used, or the gallons per megawatt hour, it certainly differs by where the energy procures electricity. So it's I don't have the answer as far as what's the most efficient. I can only say that consumptive water use that is plumbed to lay need, we have to reduce.
I think you got all these questions.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad you're here to answer them. So thank you very much.
One more question regarding the new buses that we're getting. Are we going to have charging stations at the schools? Because I would hate to see a bus run out of juice and have to go back to the Arville yard or the Cheyenne yard where the stations will be there, but not be able to charge, let's say, at an elementary school while that bus sits there waiting for the schools to get out. Because normal buses go out there, park, and the driver goes inside the break room and then goes back out before he picks up the kids and drives them out. Are we considering the charging stations as part of the solar and everything? So we can also charge these new buses that we're getting. That's what we're going with.
Yeah. So right now, no, we haven't looked at it. We don't have a need for chargers at the schools right now. So the way that we have one bus for one charger, they always go back to their yard between the morning drop off and the afternoon drop off. And we have a window of time there with the DC fast charger that we talked about. We do not have. We do have many routes that these buses are not able to accommodate due to their limits. So they can go 100 miles. 100 miles, depending on the weather conditions, there may be times where it's too hot or too cold. That is not 100 miles. So right now they're being assigned to routes, and this is part of the learning process. That's why we got 2. That was why ultimately 30 sounds like a lot, but like I said, a long way to go. So right now, no. There's a couple reasons for it, but Mainly, we don't need them yet. As the routes get longer, as the replacement of buses get longer, we will have to have them.
I would hate to see one of these buses on I-15 stuck right now and run out of juice.
No, I mean, this particular bus has a 100-mile range. This is a 72-seater. The future buses that we're buying are 84-seaters, and they'll have bigger capacities. But yeah, right now we're being conservative with the route.
I know we have a lot going on, so this is just page 2. But when we spoke before, the solar at these high schools that were NV Energy, that was a legislative commitment. So with the legislative session coming up, is there an active force to advocate for more solar, funds for more solar energy? Are you aware of any of those?
I am not aware. Yeah, I am not aware.
Okay.
There was a period where I did have a conversation about the fact that would be great for all school districts in Nevada, not just ours. And as we talked about earlier, I'm constantly in touch with Todd Stork about the impacts of these, particularly around operations. So if it happens, I will let you know. I am not aware of anything right now.
Okay. And then, because that also affected, I know, even the rooftop solar, there was some potential interest, perhaps, of trying to push for some, at least, complementary funds to retrofitting some
Yes,
schools.
it's absolutely an opportunity for us that we currently do not have funds.
And then you said that this was a moratorium on these, but I know that there's been a lot of money spent on HVAC updates, obviously. So what does that have to do with a lot of these new systems that were replaced? What sort of timeline or is happening? Are we going to need to be dedicating a lot more money to retrofitting these? What's the situation?
No, so this moratorium is for new development.
Okay.
Yeah. So generally, it's only our new designs that we're working on. There may be an actual school or two, especially an elementary school of ours, that we do a comprehensive modernization. We actually are able to convert to air-cooled systems. That would just be if we have a space. It's primarily a space and a system engineering level question. It ultimately wouldn't be that much of a cost difference to the bond on a project for a modernization to go to a direct system. But we do not have to. We can install a new cooling tower where we have one now.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all of this. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Page 3.
Okay, we're going to do page 3. I've got a couple slides on water, which we've already hinted on a couple times. And the last time I spoke on this particular topic, I kind of gave you the example. We did the football fields. We've talked about that a number of times. It's been a very successful project for us. From Maintain, just a performance standpoint, let alone a water conservation standpoint. So at the time that I presented last time, we had done a little scoping on our sporting fields. We have now been working, my team and Justin's team, on assessing all of our high school sporting fields to try to build what that roadmap could look like, how we could prioritize these schools, because again. Partners in the community, we need to reduce our water consumption. The top 2 areas of consumptive water use are evaporative cooling and irrigation. Irrigation being number 1. So we have, I believe the number that we just reached was about 9 million square feet high school sporting fields. And so we've got a long process to undertake. When we did the football fields, there were several conditions that came together for that to happen over the course of the year. A little bit more. Yeah, so our early discussions about converting sporting fields at high schools were going to be more in the 5 to 7 year time frame to cycle through all the schools, and that would be prioritized by their conditions. So I'm giving you an example of what the layout and centennial might look like, because this is a school that has a fairly acute need for this project. If you look at this, I would also highlight that sort of the areas that look kind of gray between the green turf are also turf, are also grass. And as I'm going to talk about the next the next slide, that's an area where we're going after and replacing sort of non-play turf with desert landscape. Talk more about that on the next slide. So Centennial is a good example where that surrounding area represents 133,000 square feet. Tremendous amount. See. Also, those are hills. They're very hard to maintain to get comes to. So there's a lot to be considered. Obviously, we work with the high school principals on this, coaches, and continue to do that on this. So I'm going to move on to the next page, and then we can talk about non-play turf removal. So giving you the example of Valley, I think I may have brought this forward last time as conceptual. We've executed many of these projects already. Valley, for example, what you're looking at on that picture are different areas in red that represent grass, right? So, you know, we already did the football field. We have other areas sort of around the school. If you look, there are, you know, 2,000, 5,000, 1,000 areas. These are not play areas, right? They're just grass that people may walk on. Otherwise, all we do is mow the grass and grass above the grass. So these areas have been targeted, and if you haven't noticed, the Water Authority's gone after this as well from a standards, from a standard level. So you actually wouldn't be able to build this coming in a couple of years. You couldn't even build non-play turf. So we're going through, particularly high schools have been large areas. So up to this point, we've done over 40 projects, totaling over 1 million square feet. Turf removed. Obviously, we're receiving rebates to partner with the Water Authority on projects. So credit the Justin's team for managing these projects. Again, working with every principal along the way to make sure that we get the areas that they are okay with us converting. And we've certainly had areas that the school says, no, we use that for this, and this. We need to keep that turf. To piggyback on your question from earlier, we have schools that have other areas that aren't even necessarily grass now, but they kind of want to be grass. They go ahead and put instead of turf in there. And that's just for something programmatic that they want to have. So that is the story on water. Any questions there? Okay, we kind of hit on that. So we'll move to slide 5, please. So one of the things that I wanted to bring, and this ties energy efficiency specifically, but it also brings the air quality. So this is the indoor air quality side. I know that the topics earlier were about outdoor air quality. I wanted to bring, some sense of what we've done over the past couple of years. We have a large workforce, just like everybody's workforce was impacted by COVID-19. And from a maintenance standpoint, we have about 50,000 air filters. When we do a change across the district, it's about 50,000 air filters that need to be changed every 3 to 4 months on that sort of normal scale. It's fairly Herculean. We had to sit down and really work on our budget, work on our staffing levels, work with some partners to be able to meet that in the schools. Where we can, and this is somewhat of an engineering discussion, but MERV 13 is a rating of a filter. We have most of our schools would be fitted with MERV 8 filter. MERV 13, layman's terms, is able to capture more particulates out of the air because it has more surface area. And so we are able to put MERV 13s typically on larger HVAC systems, high school air handlers, as opposed to classroom heat pumps in elementary school. So where we can, we put MERV 13 filters. They are quite a bit more expensive than MERV 8. So it's another budget thing that we have to plan for. But they provide better filtration, so particulate matter, things like that we've been concerned about. Wearing masks, we're also working on filtration. The theme on this slide is really ventilation and filtration. So we talk about filtration, we talk about coil cleaning. So this is actually an effort that started at the district in 2019. The coils on any air conditioning equipment need to be cleaned on a regular basis. Typically, the filter protects that, but we did a comprehensive effort to clean all coils over the course of 2020 and 2021, and now we're on a regular frequency of cleaning coils. Fundamentally, that makes the unit more efficient, so that's an energy benefit that I think we've actually seen that talk within the energy about our performance. And that's why the project started in 2019, energy standpoint. But what it does do is allow for better indoor air quality because the airflow in general improves through the unit. So more air goes through the filter, cycles through the system better air quality. Lastly, when we talk about ventilation, we spent a lot of time with the maintenance crew going around to the outside air systems, fixing dampers, fixing equipment issues. And so one of the main recommendations from everybody that was recommending on this, from Ashbury to Harvard and others, was to increase your outside air. So we've done that. Good. Quite a bit of work order and repair. We move to the next slide, please. Summarize some of that with an overall look at what we're doing in terms of healthy buildings. And you know, again, as a director of sustainability and environmental services, we have a group of environmental services professionals that you know, do a lot of indoor air quality data, gathering and assessments. So anytime a school has an issue, we have a team that's dedicated to go out and investigate, whether it be air quality, odors, things like that. We talked about purposeful HVAC design. So our new designs of these schools are incorporating things like the ability to bring in more outside air when it's needed. So a CO2 sensor in a room can detect the increased, you know, occupancy of that room, and as that goes up, we're able to control outside air and increasing that outside air. Similarly, if the vacant room, low CO2 levels, we're trying to get to about 800 parts per million. Your normal outside air is about 400 to 420. And a good standard pre-pandemic would have been about 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million of CO2 in a room. We, you know, really works to get to where we can get. And so when you look at all the studies that are out there about human performance, it's about 900 where you start to see any cognitive decline. You ever been on an airplane and fallen asleep right when you're boarding the plane? It's because they have no ventilation going on. This is why. They're not bringing in outside air until you start flying in the air and pick up. So that's the situation that we're trying to avoid in our schools. So we'll talk about UDC technology. Here's an example of a tool that our schools have been given to rapidly disinfect the room. So high use areas or areas that have been unknown type of pathogen. Go in there, push a button on this device, and disinfect that room in a matter of 7 minutes. Finally, we have an integrated pest management policy. This is something that we brought back in 2020, actually, to the Board of School Trustees as a policy. Basically, the whole intent of that policy is that we use less chemicals to manage it. What it means is you have to work through prevention, you have to work through other mechanisms within the schools. So this is an education component to our custodial staff, our building managers, that here's what you need to do to prevent pests. When you do that, you can reduce the chemicals used. That said, I am to the last slide for comments and questions.
All right, thank you so much, Mark, for that very detailed presentation, and appreciate all the questions that we've had to date. Wanted to open it up. Ms. Williams, you've got your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say how exciting it is to see the district making such an effort around the quality of air of our students. A lot of our children today suffer with asthma and other issues, allergies and things like that. And they spend so much time in school that it's important that they have a clean environment. I did want to ask a question as it relates to your filters. You may have said, and I didn't hear because it's a little difficult to hear, on the conference call, but how often do you change the filters? How often are they suggested to be changed?
Kind of answered the question. We change the filters as they're recommended to be changed. So For example, a MERV 8 filter is a 3 to 4 month change cycle. Depending on the type of MERV 13 you buy, there are some that can last for a year or even 2 years because they have a tremendous amount of surface area. And the way that you are able to evaluate that is actually by the pressure drop. So those larger systems where we're able to put a higher efficiency, MERV 13 or MERV 14 filter, you get a reading called the pressure drop. And as that pressure drop increases, we know the filter is not performing. So ultimately, if we were to have enough sensors and in the right places, we would actually know when we needed to change every filter. And in that case, we would change it on demand as opposed to a fixed schedule. That's something my former employment at MGM, we did on a regular basis with our larger systems, especially when you have a MERV 13 filter that costs a lot more money. But so generally, it's 3 to 4 months or about a year, just depending on the type of the filter.
Okay, and you answered my next question, which was going to be if it's on a regular schedule, or how do you know that the filter needs to be changed? So there's some kind of an alert.
There can be. I mean, there's a human element to this. Our schools have, whether it be a head custodian, building manager, or in some cases a building engineer, that this is also part of their checks. Any of our HVAC techs know that when they go on a roof to look at something and they are already in the air handler for another issue, they need to look at the filters. So we may get a picture of a filter that is in a bad place, it's broken, or it may be loaded up and caved in a bit, and that immediately would result in a work order. So,
but worst case scenario, if that doesn't occur, there is a schedule that's in place for that particular filter based on the criteria you indicated.
Correct.
Okay, and so then that filter would automatically be changed at that point.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a question, follow-up question? Regarding those filters and stuff, how often are the air ducts cleaned in the system? Because like in our house, we will put a vacuum cleaner in there and then make sure that's clean, so that way we're not blowing out dust as well. So so because the filter can only do so much, what else entails in the maintenance process of the whole system?
Yeah, duct cleaning has been a much more on-demand as a system looks like it needs it. Has not been a scheduled task other than when we go do some of our bigger HVAC projects. It's always a part of it. But we're going to keep the duct work, which is the most important.
Are there additional questions for Mark in the room?
Just one question from Robert for the record. For the it's encouraging to hear that we're having a higher cubic feet outside air for fresh air. Would you happen to know if the existing mechanical system, some sort of heat exchanger, tempers the air? It does take a lot of energy to temper hot or cold air coming in for that fresh air.
So new design, it's that delineation, right? New designs, yes. In many cases, we're putting an ERD, recovery generator, so that is the unit bringing in outside air, and it's also exhausting air, so it has a heat exchanger to try to capture some of that latent heat from the building. And in particular, that unit just tempers the air, right? So a lot of times the unit itself will also have a cooling coil or heating coil to bring down the temperature. That's a dedicated outside air unit. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mark, I also just wanted to add, just really wanted to thank you for the detailed presentation, and then really also just for the effort that the district's putting forward. We know that we're in a crisis mode where it comes to water, and I think the cost savings is one factor that we always keep in front of us, but we know that we have to be mindful of the environment in which we live in, the health and safety. And so we just really wanted to say a huge thank you to the team for all the work that they're doing to prioritize the health and wellness, our social responsibility, and as well what we can do for the environment. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, with that, wanted to now move on to agenda item 2.06, questions on and or removal of items on motions and taskings. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none. So we have 3 items that are currently on the list. If we could go through these I think we can do it fairly quickly. Ms. Williams, do we have an update from Dr. Barton on when he might be presenting to the group on the CTA conversation?
I'm actually meeting with him tomorrow.
Oh, great. Okay,
So
wonderful.
I will be able to provide you with an update.
Okay, thank you so much. And we know that Trustee Guzman couldn't be here with us today, and so I know that's something that we have on our motions and taskings related to the broad-based disparity study that the district is doing. So hopefully we'll be able to have her join us at our February meeting. The next one is, and I think that relates also to the disparity-wide study that's on the next item. We do also have our refund agreements. Mr. Lazaroff is not with us today, and I know we wanted to make sure that we have that conversation, follow up with Mr. Lazaroff and with Trustee Guzman on some next steps that we have there. Are there any additions to motions and taskings that the committee would like to see?
Gina Blackman-Taylor, for the record, I have a proposal. This has come up in conversations with other committee members as well as others in the community, is that kind of just getting an understanding of what goes into these costs of these elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, because you get to these numbers that are, I think, really tough sometimes to understand. And I understand from the budget side what's happening, but really once a project is completed, I'd like to see a cost breakdown of an average elementary school, one middle school, and one high school, just to see a breakdown of where those costs are after it's been completed. That's just so that I get more of an understanding of actual numbers. And I know it doesn't matter to me what elementary school, what middle school, what high school, as long as it's kind of one of our average situations. But I get those questions a lot, and I want to be able to speak more coherently about that.
So Mark, can I ask you to address that, or perhaps even Rodney? I don't know if this is one that can just be a summary of just, and Gina, just to make sure I understand, you're looking for an actual construction project and the line item, maybe the summary line item between, mechanical or labor, or is maybe
labor, mechanical, the materials, those. When we start talking about $130 million, $200 million, I think those numbers are just, you get to the point where you're like, okay, that it's just a large number, right? And so seeing how that breaks down into, it is this much in labor cost, it is this much in materials cost, it is this much in design cost, where those elements come from in a broken down way that then you can share and communicate in that effort to making transparency.
So this might be a question for Rodney and for Mark or even Justin. I understand the question now, but I'm sorry. Do the contractors provide that when you go to a contract?
So we receive a schedule of values for the project. They tend not to be based solely on material and labor. They're more broken out by trades and divisions of construction. So a standard project has about 32 construction divisions. It might be demolition, it's earthwork, it's low voltage, it's electrical, it's mechanical, it's masonry, and so forth. And we have a pretty detailed tracking of all of that. Come back and we'll talk about that.
That'd be great.
Not the cost of the record, we also reviewed over our construction minutes. We put construction costs down by GL account line items, it won't be necessarily what just was presented. for example, we'll have construction, we'll have HVAC, we'll have farming, various line items and that regards. I think the idea of what Justin's talking about is more what the payouts will be provided by the contractor.
I think it's different ways to look at a project. Pretty standard construction industry is to do it by divisions or trades.
And not so much by materials and labor.
Yeah, because sometimes they break out materials and labor, sometimes they don't necessarily. Like we like to talk about mechanical systems of whole cost versus these 15 parts cost X dollars and it costs X dollars to install that piece.
Okay.
Abraham, for the record, are you guys using like a system like Pre-Core, like construction manager that utilities, electrical, usage,
So we have a construction management software called eBuilder. Similar to Procore and that one's almost like, but similar. It's the big difference for us is it's a little more owner geared driven than Procore and some of the other softwares that are more contractor driven.
Okay. All right. Are there any other, well, we can take a motion on this request for, it sounds like a motion or tasking for a data or information request to the staff to give, and I apologize if I cut you off, Gina, it's very difficult to hear when you're remote today. So, but just wanted to, it sounds like we're looking for, the motion is to request of staff to provide an example of a completed construction project, and I'm assuming a new construction project that has appropriate trades outlined and or the consistent application of how contracts and expenditures are provided. Is that
Like a summary? I had written cost breakdown of average elementary school, middle school, high school, but I like your language. That's the main gist, yes. So I would like to make a motion. We included in motions and taskings on a presentation of cost breakdown and on completed, recently completed average elementary school, middle school, and high school.
I'll second that.
okay? Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, with that, the motion carries. Is there any other request on motions and taskings today? Okay, all right, seeing none. Moving on to agenda item 2.07, future agenda planning. Is there any public comment? Okay, we've talked about two of our carryover agenda items. One is regarding site selection and environmental factors that may impact school health and safety and how that is provided, and I think that was talked about. And then also Mark Campbell had referenced that hopefully by the February meeting we'll be looking at a presentation on the FCI. And then I know for a future agenda, either February, don't want to get our meetings too packed, and or March, I know it's time to bring back our bylaws for consideration. So we'll be working with, again, with Al Lopez and Gina Blackman-Taylor. We had started it. We've had some transition of our leadership. And so the plan is to bring back our the Bond Oversight Committee bylaws back to this body with just any updates and or revisions. Is there any, that's not a new action item, but any requests for future agenda planning?
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure in that environmental that it includes a list or a mapping of schools and where they're located to industrial sites such as Wells Cargo in that presentation, please.
Okay. Mark, is that any questions or comments on that?
I think we can do our best to do that. I think that should be possible.
Whatever your best is. I mean, I know it's asking a lot, and I am not even remotely interested in little things. I'm thinking about the big impact. We've had a lot of discussion over here in District F because they tend to. A lot of them are over here in District F because it's unincorporated and it's the growing area and it's where a lot of these pits were located. But we've had a lot of problems, especially with Spring Valley High School. And so that's what I'm more concerned about is those kinds of big impacts that we're seeing.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so I just want to confirm that since we haven't made any additions, we just made a clarification that we don't need to take action on that because those are already outstanding. Mark, council?
I'm good. I'm clear.
Okay, all right. So moving on to agenda item 3.01, public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. Is there any public comment today? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to agenda item 4, request. This is an action item. Want to see if there is a motion for an adjournment of our January the 19th, 2023 Bond Oversight Committee.
I'll motion that we adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
I already got it. Al got me.
Great. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition?
And Madam Chair, thank you, Valerie or Gail, whoever sent me the link for the meeting today. I appreciate that.
All right. Yes, thank you very, very much. With that, we can consider our meeting adjourned. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next month.